Rohini, my life partner and soulmate for more than half a century. Whether at work or in the world outside, she was a considerate, caring, empathetic, understanding, generous, and affectionate person who was always most thoughtful about others.
I was proud to be her son. While working in Niti Aayog, I was known as Rohini Nayyar's son. Good evening, everyone. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to the ceremony for the first Rohini Nayyar Prize for outstanding contribution to rural development by a person under 40 years of age. My name is Dheeraj Nayyar, and it's my privilege to be your host this evening for this award in the memory of my late mother. As a family, there are 5 of us now that my mother is no more. We do different things and we have different worldviews, But the one thing we do have in common is in what we think, in what we do, in our worldview, is the cause of the poor and the marginalized. And I think the foundation that we've set up, the Nayyar Foundation for Social and Economic Purpose, is done with that motivation to try and make a contribution, try and make a dent on the lives of those which still need a lot of upliftment. This prize is the first activity that we are doing. We hope to do many more things in the years ahead. But this prize for rural development is particularly apt, not only because my late mother worked most of her professional life on it, but also because the most marginalized and poor people in India live in the rural areas. So I think it's fitting that this first activity of the Nayyar Foundation is the Rohini Nayyar Prize. And I'm very pleased to have a very eminent set of persons on the dais who will be with us through the next 1 hour. I'd like to welcome our chief guest for the evening, Mr. Suman Berry, a distinguished economist. He's vice chairman of the Niti Aayog. I think his presence here is very important for us because he heads the institution where my late mother, Dr. Rohini Nayyar, spent most of her professional life working on rural development and social development. He also knew my mother, the late Dr. Rohini Nayyar, in a professional and personal capacity. He has spent many decades at the World Bank. He has been Director General of the National Council of Applied Economic Research. He's been Chief Economist of Shell, among many other distinguished achievements. Thank you, Mr. Berry, very much for joining us this evening. We also have with us on the dais 3 very eminent persons from civil society who have been the jury for this prize and have been actually much more than the jury. They've also helped in conceptualizing the prize and sitting through many sessions of brainstorming. I'd like to welcome Mr. Renana Chabwala, who's the National Coordinator of SEWA. The next is Dr. Rajesh Tandon, who's the founder-president of PRIA, Participatory Research in Asia. And last but not least, we have Dr. Ashok Khosla, who's the founder of Development Alternatives and a pioneer of sustainable development. I'd like to kick off the evening by inviting my father, Professor Deepak Nayyar, to say a little bit about my late mother, Dr. Rohini Nayyar, and the reason why we thought this prize would be an apt recognition of her legacy.
Honorable Chief Guest Suman Berry, esteemed members of the jury, Ashok Khosla, Rajesh Tandon, and Renana Chabwala, dear guests, friends, and family. I am touched that so many of you have found the time and made the effort to join us this evening. For me, it is an emotional moment, an poignant occasion. Even so, I must find the composure to say something about Rohini, my life partner and soulmate for more than half a century. I should also outline, as Dheeraj said, why we have instituted this prize in memory of her life and work. Rohini and I first met in 1965 when we were final year undergraduates at the University of Delhi and got married in 1969. The young Rohini I knew was always clear that she wanted to join the IAS. And there were two reasons. First, it was about asserting her independence at a time when it was difficult for young women to escape the fate of an arranged marriage, let alone enter the world of work, so that gender equality was a distant, distant dream. Second, it was about a desire to connect with rural India and work for the well-being of poor people. She stayed with her determination and joined the IAS. In solidarity, I did the same. Sometime later, in pursuit of my academic quest, I returned to Oxford. With Rohini, both of us on leave from the government. It was no surprise that while at Oxford, Rohini wrote her B.Lit. Dissertation on landless agricultural labor in Uttar Pradesh, with a focus on employment, wages, and living conditions, her research supported by months spent doing fieldwork in Barabanki and Raebareli. It was not long before she realized that academia was my natural home, and she decided to quit what was her natural home. Both of us resigned from the IAS in 1975. The story of that chapter of our lives was summed up pithily decades later by our son Dheeraj when he said at a memorial meeting for Rohini, "My father joined the IAS because of my mother, and my mother left the IAS because of my father." We stayed on in England for 7 years, and Rohini reinvented her professional life. To start with, she did some research for the ILO on poverty and landlessness in Uttar Pradesh and on poverty and inequality in rural Bihar. After that, she decided to take the plunge and do a PhD, which was not something she had intended to do. Her doctoral thesis, later published as a book by Oxford University Press, Rural Poverty in India, an analysis of interstate differences, was both original and pioneering. She estimated the calorie equivalent of the actual quantities of food consumed and then constructed state-specific poverty lines in money terms to provide systematic estimates of poverty in rural India during the 1970s and 1980s. She was also the first to study interstate differences in poverty and how these related to malnutrition, disease, morbidity, or education and healthcare. These multiple dimensions of poverty had barely received any attention from economists at the time. It came much, much later. Thus, she stayed with and nurtured her core interests, even as she moved seamlessly from administration to research. Rohini returned to the world of work in India when she joined the Planning Commission, where she served for almost 2 decades, bridging the gap between research and policy, providing leadership on a wide range of policy issues during this period, spanning poverty alleviation, employment creation, drought-prone areas, wasteland development, Panchayati Raj, women and child development, nutrition, and civil society organizations. She was closely associated with the implementation and evaluation of several self-employment programs in rural areas and was a strong advocate of the consolidation of many such centrally sponsored schemes. The culmination of her efforts in this domain was the conception and design of the MNREGA during 2004 and 2005 at the Planning Commission, where she played a pivotal role. Even if I say so, she was the conceptual architect. She also championed the idea and led the process of preparing the first ever India Human Development Report. But this watershed initiative was only a beginning, as she went on to institute a series of human development reports for most states of India, involving reputed institutions and scholars from outside the government in this endeavor. These are just a few examples from Rohini's wide range. Over the past year, I have been overwhelmed to read and hear countless tributes on Rohini's professional contributions. She might not have been visible in the public domain, but she was incredibly influential in shaping public policy. Yet, that was Rohini, working tirelessly behind the scenes to make a lasting impact on rural development. In doing so, she mentored her younger colleagues, empowering a generation of economists, administrators, policymakers, and development practitioners. Yet, in keeping with her persona, she was so modest and unassuming that she never spoke about her professional work life with either family or friends. Thus, the tributes and the praise after we lost her to cancer were a surprise even to family members and close friends. Of course, Rohini is remembered fondly by all for her personal qualities, as she touched the lives of everyone she came into contact with, whether at work or in the world outside. She was a considerate, caring, empathetic, understanding, generous, and affectionate person who was always most thoughtful about others. And she was adored by people across the spectrum of age who knew her. A lifelong friend from Vermont in the United States, a contemporary at Oxford, who might be in our midst online, described Rohini as a force of nature in an email sent to me last week. The Rohini Nayyar Prize for an outstanding contribution to rural development in India, conceived by us, is our attempt to embody that spirit of Rohini, to recognize and reward young individuals working away from the media headlines with marginalized communities in rural areas to create better living conditions for people and enable longer-term sustainable development. This idea surfaced in a conversation I had with our sons, Dheeraj and Gaurav, a few months after we lost Rohini, as we thought it was also important for us to celebrate her professional life. The transformation of the idea into a concept and then into a reality would simply not have been possible without the knowledge, the experience, the wisdom, and the guidance of our esteemed jury members, Ashok Khosla, Rajesh Tandon, and Renana Chabwala, who were most generous with their scarce time. We know how busy they are, and yet they found the time for us. We owe them a debt of gratitude. In conclusion, there are just two things I'd like to mention about this prize. First, as far as I am aware, and most people I have talked to, this is the first such prize on a contribution to rural development. Second, in our society and country, as indeed in most societies and countries in the world, there are very few honors or awards named after women. I think Rajesh, who has a Martha Farrell Award in memory of his wife, is probably an exception to that. But I think these two attributes of the prize might make Rohini smile at us from the heavens. In times to come, we hope that the Rohini Nayyar Prize will become the gold standard for persons working in the world of rural development in India, and that it would motivate the winners, inspire more innovative work, and disseminate best practices across India. Thank you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you indeed for my brother and I. She was always our mother, and we identified more with her personal qualities, obviously. But I also happened to do a stint in the Niti Aayog, which was successor to the Planning Commission, and once there, I realized that many of the people that were there in relatively senior positions by the time I joined had been mentored or touched by her in some way, and the regard they had for her, both personal and professional, was really amazing. I was proud to be her son. While working in Niti Aayog, I was known as Rohini Nayyar's son, so that was a great privilege. I'd now like to invite, on behalf of the jury, Ms. Renana Chabwala to address the audience.
I was asked to speak about the process in the jury, but before we start, I'd like to say that I've had quite a bit of experience working with Rohini. And first, many years ago, I think in the late 80s, we did a project on wasteland development, and she visited it and wrote a short note about it. And then later, when she was doing the India Human Development Report, I had quite a few discussions with her. And then later on, when she was making a lot of policies for the Northeast, we also were working there and we had discussions. And in every one of those interactions, I have been very impressed with the depth of her understanding. And I think especially with her warm-heartedness and caring. And so I'm especially privileged to be here and talking about her. As a jury, we had a very hard task. When the first advertisement went out, we thought, well, this is the first time. Will we really get applications? We got 102 applications. And it wasn't too many months. Within a few months, we got 102. And there was, the foundation did a first listing and brought it down to 24, the top 24. And we as a jury then really went into depth into those 24. We had invited, or rather the foundation had invited people from academia, from government, and from civil society. At least in the 24, we didn't really get anybody from academia and hope more come in next year. Just one or two from government and mostly from civil society. So in a way, that made me feel proud because civil society, in spite of what you hear, is alive and innovative and impactful. And that was the second point, which was the work was supposed to be, it was to be judged on its impactfulness and its innovation. And how do you judge a work on its innovation, especially in India, where everything has been done in some way or the other before? And so we were looking at creative ways in which people had been working, or where they had used other techniques from other disciplines, or had taken another technique and changed it. And impactful, that's also difficult, because you can just say, I reached so many people, but is that impactful? And what we found was that impact was sort of at different levels. So there were people who were doing, who were making modules and doing training and bringing those to very large numbers. And then there were people who were actually embedded in communities and working with communities. And I think when we went through those 24, we then finally we had to come down to some short list. We came down to a short list of 7. And in that short list of 7, it was very difficult. And as I said, there were these, I think they were all civil society people. Most of it was civil society, but those 7 were civil society people. And out of those 7, we actually sent people we knew well to go and meet them, to see their work, to understand it, and then to come back and report to us. And we received the reports of all 7. And again, it became very difficult to decide. But finally, we came down to a short list of 3. And there, quite honestly, it became impossible. And we really felt, I think the jury, actually there were 4 of us, Ashok and Rajesh and Deepak and myself. And we felt so proud that there were so many young people. And many of those young people had left other careers and come and stayed in the community, or had not joined other careers and had just made this a career. And so finally, out of those 3, we had to choose one, and we did. And I'm not going to announce it. I think it's going to be announced later. But once again, I just wanted to say that the depth of work that is going on, the impact. Again, when you live in a community which has been marginalized, where the government programs are not working, where the infrastructure is not good, all three of us who have worked with civil society for many years felt that was really the key to impact. You don't look at large numbers, you look at real change. And living with the community, bringing your skills, your networks into that community and changing the lives of the community, that's real impact. And as I said, we were very proud to see, pleased to see that there were so many people who were doing that. I hope, and we're looking forward to next year, where I'm sure many of the people, and we hope some of the people who we could not give the prize to only because we had to give it to one, will reapply. And we are sure that this prize is going to inspire people to do more and more to bring their skills and their commitment to change in the rural areas. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for that. I truly hope that among the prize winners over the years, this is going to be an annual prize. We'll have the future Ashok Khoslas, Rajesh Tandons, and Renana Jhabwalas, emerging out of this recognition and hopefully the motivation to do what these eminent persons have done. In fact, all of them, I must tell you, could also have had alternate careers, and they chose to work in civil society with the marginalized. So hats off to all of you. I'd now like to ask Mr. Sonberry, our chief guest today, to deliver his address.
Deepak, Dheeraj, friends on the jury, friends in the audience, let me start by saying that I feel very honored to have been asked to officiate in this capacity. The reasons for that I'll come to in a minute, but I should start by saying that I knew others in the Nayyar family. Actually, before I knew Rohini, I knew Deepak at university in England, and in fact, my elder brother was at university college with him here. And I knew Vineet when he was in Washington, before he came back, after a civil service career and before he came back to his very distinguished professional career in India. And so my introduction to Rohini was actually courtesy Dr. Bimal Jalan, and I see Meenu here, because Dr. Bimal Jalan was the president or the chairman of the board at NCAR, where I was the director general, and we had a vacancy in the governing body, and he nominated, as was his prerogative, Rohini. I would say this was in the mid-2000s sometime. So that was my first encounter with Rohini, and I can only, as it were, reinforce what people have said about her. Sharp, kind, very attentive in a very low-key way, but with a knack for making the astute comment at the right time, which just clarified, as it were, the issue at hand. But in the way that Deepak has said, the scale and enormity of her professional influence was something that I myself became aware of, largely as the tributes started to flow in. I happened to be outside the country when she left us, and so it was a while before I caught up with Dheeraj and Deepak, and so may have missed some of the earlier tributes to her. So it is it is an honor for me to be asked to officiate at this event. And it is a very noble endeavor, I would say, that the Rohini Nayyar Foundation has taken on to endow such a generous prize in honor of those who are at the coalface of rural development. And indeed, as we've seen with the Infosys awards, these do have a way of stimulating people, setting standards above all else, and the fact that the jury is a jury of such impeccable credentials, I think is what will help establish it. And I'm pleased to know that over and above the award, there are other activities that the foundation is also contemplating. Now, I would say that the most important reason for my being asked to give to offer these remarks is what Dheeraj has mentioned, which is that there is a continuity, if only in the building, between the Planning Commission, which is where Rohini made her major contributions, and Niti Aayog, where I am now the vice chairman, and perhaps the right thing to say is that this is my alternate career, because this is certainly not something that I was anticipating till relatively recently. And I think the best I could do to commemorate Rohini's life and work would be to indicate how tall a shadow forward she casts, which is to say that so many of the initiatives that I see around me at Niti Aayog, I can't yet claim credit for them. Some of them, I think, are, as it were, in the professional mainstream. Others owe their origin to insights of Prime Minister Modi. But there are so many established programs now which no doubt rest on the commitment and the ideas and the convictions of Rohini and the people she worked with. And I don't want to give you a long catalogue, but let me just indicate, as it were, what some of those are and how they, in a sense, mark an evolution in not only the challenges, but the solutions to the problems of rural development. Firstly, many of you would have heard about the so-called Sustainable Development Goals. These are universal goals that have been subscribed to by the world community. And what's important about them is that they help to integrate various aspects of the good life, the environmental, gender, nutrition, the welfare of the child. And since Rohini's time, I would say, in a sense, these give us an integrated framework for thinking about not only the challenge of rural development, but largely the challenge of rural development. And Niti Aayog is the nodal agency in India for pushing the Sustainable Development Goals down to the state level, and indeed, to some extent, in the Northeast, to the district level as well. So this is one example of how the agenda that Rohini pioneered has become now institutionalized. Second, we have something called the Aspirational Districts Program. And I would have to say that these programs tend to be rather sarkari, whereas what we are honoring today is essentially the work of individuals, the work of civil society. But I feel sure that collectors of the kind that Deepak and Rohini probably were, do draw upon civil society in the districts which have been designated aspirational districts. And the term aspirational districts is meant to designate districts that have been selected because of backwardness, but where intensive focus on particularly health indicators rather than funding is meant to generate improvements in performance. And it's remarkable how successful that has been. I think a third institutionalized dimension of the agenda that Rohini worked on is something that's led by the UNDP, called the multi-dimensional poverty index. Many of you in this room would know that India's poverty is traditionally measured on the basis of a poverty line, which is in turn calorie-based. But consistent with the Sustainable Development Goals, the UNDP has popularized and India has adopted the multidimensional poverty index. And we had, this is based on a survey called the National Family Health Survey. The important point, and the reason for mentioning it, is that the tough slog of programs of the kind like Manrega, but also various other programs, ICDS, the Integrated Child Development Scheme, all of these programs, the multidimensional poverty index indicates that over the long haul, these have actually been working. And finally, but not by any means unimportantly, the mobilization of digitization to create financial inclusion, which is one step beyond the self-help group movement, which of course came into prominence at the time that Rohini was at the Planning Commission. The mobilization of digitization to create these accounts, and for these accounts to be in the name of women, and for welfare payments of various kinds to be paid into these accounts, I think has been an important innovation, which in turn has been that has, I would say, done something to equalize the gender gap in the rural areas. I don't want to continue too much longer, but my purpose here has been to say that the intellectual work conjoined with the administrative experience that Rohini brought to her time at the Planning Commission and afterwards, all of these have not been in vain. There's still an enormous agenda. There's still an enormous amount of pain. COVID didn't make things any easier, but I would, venture to say that on the whole, the curve has been upward. And for that, I think we have Rohini and her cohort to thank. So I will now step aside so that we can both find out more about the awardees, and then so that the identity of the final winner can be revealed. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. That was a wonderful exposition of how there's so much continuity in government policy, and those who worked in the past continue to influence the present and the future. The time now to focus on this year's awardee, and as Ms. Jabwal told us all, it was a very difficult decision. And the award winner this year comes from a remote location in a remote part of the country. He comes from Nagaland and is doing some excellent work there. I will let him reveal his name himself in this short video where he talks about his work.
My name is Trisham Santa, founder of Better Life Foundation and a Lead India Fellow. I grew up in a remote village in eastern Nagaland. As I grew up, I've experienced myriad challenges of relatively marginalized rural community. I went to National Law School in Bangalore. However, I've dropped out and relocated to US. Since I was selected for the Global Youth Advisor panel for the United Nations Population Fund in New York. I've also obtained the H-1B visa. However, in 2009, I've decided to come home to concentrate on issues of rural livelihood security, biodiversity conservation, education for change, and promote innovative social enterprises. The prime reason of me coming home was to focus on quality education. Since our community, the Eastern Nagaland, we represent approx 48% of the entire Nagaland population. But we have not produced even a single IAS officer in history. So in the first 6 months, I've decided not to use even a two-wheeler when I travel in the community. But at the end of 6 months, I've realized that quality education was only a far-fetched dream because the priority was something else. People were hungry. They wanted to fill their stomach. So their priority was to fill their stomach. Now I'm very happy to work with 1,200 marginal farmers who are undergoing a transition from chum cultivation, slash and burn, shifting cultivation to a settled cultivation where they are growing mostly orchard and temperate fruits. And their income have also drastically increased. Their income from 3 to 4 acres was about 34,000 7 years ago. And now today, from an acre of an orchard, their average earning is 1,33,000.
Ladies and gentlemen, my pleasure to present this year's winner, the first winner of the Rohini Nayyar Prize, Satricham Sanktam.
Thank you, Tiraj. Thank you, Professor Tibak. The directors of Nayyar Foundation. Chief guest, Sir Suman Peri, Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog, distinguished juries, and distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen. Normally not used to speak in podium like this because I work with the farmers. Mostly we do with the action
we demonstrate this is tree, this is fruit tree. That's how I have been, so used to with the farmers for last 13 years. So if you ask me, what is the accomplishment? If you ask me to quantify, then I won't have any answer. But something for sure, what we have done is that, we always try to look at the challenges, the drudgeries faced by the community, the marginal farmers, as an opportunity to go create sustainable solution where we involve the community, where the community own the whole process. So that's how we got a lot of, good community participation all these years. So I come from a community where our forefathers used to live in the mountain tops, on top of the hill. They embrace or consider someone as a hero when they bring home enemy head home. So they never thought of, it's not that too far. It's just recent. So they have never thought of any development beyond, the village. So it was difficult life. So now things a little, have changed. And then recently when we all realized, we started to go out, we started to see life differently, how the same type of farmers, how they are earning differently, the life has changed. So I decided to come back and work with farmers. So when we initially started to, distribute saplings, when we tried to give them, when we took them for exposure, many people were reluctant. They said, we have never seen people, getting money by selling fruits. Because fruits are meant only for, free distributions. Those were the type of mindset. But in last 10 years, we have planted almost 175,000 saplings. So we promoted about 1,200. We had our own nursery. We taught our farmers how to do the grafting and raise nurseries. And, what we gave is 175, and it could be much more when the one which they have all grafted by themselves. But now I have more challenges to share, the more problems than what we have accomplished. So all these fruits are not, the yield of these fruits are not as much as what we expected, because we don't give sufficient manures and because we don't rear cows. We don't have cows, literally. So those are the challenge. So now we are trying to look at, help the farmers in value addition and marketing. And at the meantime, we also want to, promote dairy so that the farmers can, nurture, take good care of their, get good return from their investment, especially the fruit plants. So that is one part of the story. And now, from the ancestor, head hunting to now present generation, if you look at average children, average boys of about 14 years will have their own muzzle-loading gun. So I'm sure you know muzzle-loading gun, which these are all made within the villages, by the villagers. So they killed everything that is moving. So some they kill to eat and some they kill just for fun. So in order to divert their focus from, rampant hunting and excessive destruction of biodiversity, we started to train the young boys and girls in, folk dance and folklores. So in the first 6 months, from April to September, we have trained 94 young boys and girls on skilling them to be a professional, folk dance and folklore experts. So here we want to expand, we want to train more people. So now they are happy. So now we also need the government support to get them out of their community, give them more exposure. If they can be invited to perform in different, cultural programs, different festivals across the country. And we have, as part of the transition, we have also created a Farmers Innovation Center. So this was done with the contribution from the local community and also from the crowdfunding. So it's an ideation launch where we bring together the farmers to share their innovative ideas. So there are many, best practices with different farmers in different isolation in different communities. So we bring them. It's an informal platform to share their best practices and innovative ideas among the fellow farmers. So this we want to continue, and we also want to document and archive professionally. So we want to, promote this one, not necessarily only in our own community, but in all the tribal communities where all the knowledge remains undocumented. So these are some of the things, the challenges we undergo, we face every day. So I feel so privileged to receive this award. I'm receiving on behalf of the community. I'm just a facilitator. So thank you so much.
So congratulations, Sachichan. We hope that this is only not even half the work that you will do. You will, I'm sure, do a lot more and inspire many other youngsters across the country, across the Northeast, to contribute to their communities. And congratulations on this excellent work you're doing. As the jury said, the competition was tough, so you're clearly doing something innovative and creative, which is making an impact on the ground and bringing change. All that remains for me to do is to thank a number of people. Mr. Berry, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and gracing this occasion as chief guest. Our jury members, more than jury members actually, Dr. Ashok Khosla, Dr. Rajesh Tandon, Mr. Nana Jebwala, thank you so much for all the time and your effort and your guidance, more importantly, since neither of us, since the expert in rural development in the Nayyar family was no longer with us. Thank you so much for helping us through this. I'd also like to thank the team from IHD, Priyanka Tyagi and her team. They've helped with the organization and with the Zoom live streaming. I hope that's worked out well. I'd like to thank everybody who's joined us on Zoom from different parts of the world. I think we have people from the US, Europe, India, even outside Delhi. The wonders of technology that you don't have to be here to attend events such as this. And thank you again, everyone in the family, friends, distinguished audience for being here and sharing this occasion with us. We hope to see you again next year, where we'll have a different awardee, but hopefully the same spirit of enterprise, innovation, and creativity, and a passion to do something for our rural communities and our marginalized communities. Thank you so much.
I came to know Rohini when she was active in Planning Commission. We used to engage with each other more systematically after the 73rd constitutional amendment was made, and her interest in integrating the role of panchayats into various schemes of rural development is where we used to spend time together in mid and late 90s and early 2000. When she was designing Manrega, she was the one who pushed a strong role for Gram Panchayats in implementing that scheme, and I'm very delighted. The award is, in fact, an important contribution to encourage a new generation of innovators, social entrepreneurs, and those who commit themselves to bringing about improvements in the lives of the excluded and the marginalized. And I'm delighted to see the nominations coming in from young people who bring a wide range of professional backgrounds and expertise and commit themselves to this country's excluded populations in rural areas. So I look forward to many more such recognitions in the years to come in honor of Rohini's pioneering contribution.
What a great privilege to be here to celebrate the life of a person who made such a huge difference in the lives of so many people, particularly in what we call remote areas. But of course, this evening's prize has shown that no place is remote, too remote for real action by people who care. Far away from here, maybe, but at the center of the world where they work. Today, Setcham's prize demonstrates how possible it is to transform the lives of people from straight destitution to meaningful, solid, satisfied, fulfilling lives. I'm very glad to be here to be able to say that what Rohini and her family have done here is really to put center stage what were once thought of as faraway problems. And I hope that we will be able to use this prize in the future as a way of encouraging people to take more responsibility for the future of our country. Thanks.